Hi everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Help, my child won't tackle is the subject for today. This is on the back of a few emails that we've had over the last few months, and to be honest, something that's been around since we started and probably beforehand. There's just some children who don't want to tackle, scared of tackling, don't want to go win the ball. And there's reasons for it. It's oftentimes a mentality thing. It's hard because parents are stood on the sidelines and they're seeing other children happily flying to tackles, happily going to win the ball, almost like it's a real fun thing to do, which it is, by the way. But for some children, they don't like that aspect of it. They're either scared of it, don't want to do it, don't think they can do it. And we're going to talk today about some things that you can do as a parent to help them. But the first thing to say is that it's common. It's common, so please don't worry. It is a mentality thing we find more often than not, and it's often mentality that separates the good players from the best players. You might get a good player who, on the eye, fantastic technique, good passer, good dribbler, good shooter, but isn't prepared to do that other stuff, isn't prepared to go win the ball, maybe shies away from that, waits for the ball to be given to them. Then you got the other player who is maybe not as technically gifted, technically good, but they will go win the ball and they've still got it in them to be able to play a pass, have a dribble, have a shot. And it's oftentimes those players that might go a little bit further or might get picked first because they're needed, essentially. If you've got a player that can combine the two, that will go win the ball and is technically very good in a number of areas, then you've got a player. So it is an important thing, and it's something that certainly at Foot Tech we try to promote and we try to develop. It is so hard to coach, it's so hard to teach, and it oftentimes comes from the games that we do. So on that basis, what we would say is encourage their, if they're in a team, for example, is encourage their manager to help them. So the manager should be encouraging them when they're tackling, or encouraging them to tackle. And what you want the player, you want your child to understand that it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the team, and if they hear coach saying well done for it, then that's just going to help build those blocks a little bit. But the other thing that's great from a coaching perspective is 1v1 work. You don't want to be a parent that's going up to the coach and demanding that they start doing X, Y, and Z in training sessions. That's completely up to the coach. But hopefully that coach would or should be doing a lot of 1v1 stuff, because it does encourage this. There's no hiding place in 1v1. You either get the ball or you don't, and it's a win or lose situation. And what happens after a while is the more repetitions that a child has in that situation, the more chance they do have to tackle and win the ball, and the more chance that they start to realise that tackling doesn't hurt. And I think that's the main bulk of this argument is why aren't they tackling? And a lot of the time I think it's because they think they'll get hurt. The more they're exposed to 1v1, the more they start to realise that A, when I tackle I don't get hurt, and B, when I'm tackled I often don't get hurt. Exceptions to the rule, of course, but 99 times out of 100 they're absolutely fine. And all of a sudden they start to build those blocks, they start to build up that resilience and that that thing in them that just makes them believe, actually, yeah, this is all right. I'm not going to get hurt if I go try and win the ball. So lots of 1v1 work in grassroots training is important in this aspect. Certainly something we do a lot of at Foot Tech, and we do see it. The players that are consistent with attendance, that have maybe started very, very reluctant to tackle, after a few months, they're different. Maybe it's still there slightly, but you see the increases, and the longer that goes on, the older they get, it starts to just dwindle away. So definitely, if you could speak to their coach to encourage them to tackle, but also, have they thought about 1v1? Are they doing some 1v1 stuff in there? The thing that you can control as a parent is something that we call challenge reward. So instead of rewarding the goals, rewarding the assists, we're going to start rewarding the tackles. So the challenge would be something like, can you do 3 tackles today in this match or training? 5 tackles, whatever. I'd maybe start small. Can you do 3 tackles in this match today or this training session? And if they do, then they get a reward. And that reward can start small or it can be big. It may be better to start small and then grow that over time. But if you're giving them the challenge, then it becomes something different. And depending on how your child's wired, they might take that and they might run with that a little bit more than just saying, just go tackle, it doesn't hurt. Giving them that little challenge and that little reward afterwards there's some people would argue for and against an extrinsic reward, whether it be a trip to the cinema or some sweets on the way home, whatever it might be. But I do think it's got a place in some cases, and I think this is an example of that, where they're not just getting the reward for one tackle, they're getting the reward for 3 tackles, 5 tackles, or whatever. Because the more they do it, the more they start to realise, actually, yeah, this is all right. The other thing on top of that is encouragement from you and praise from you. Is start stepping away from the traditional goals, assists, and so on. It's, as a defender or even as a midfielder or attacker, how many tackles did they make to help their team? And so the challenge is there, 3 tackles, 5 tackles. Did you do that? Brilliant, right, now we get the reward. And I think you'll just start to see over time that they start to the mindset maybe is still there. They maybe still not 100% committed to tackling and so forth, but you've sort of etched away at it a little bit, and it's going to help them in the long run. It is a long process, but the more repetitions they get, the more they're exposed to these sorts of things, the easier it becomes for them, and then the tackling thing will just become a thing of the past. You'll have something else to go on to then, but that's for another time. So just to reiterate, is hopefully they're exposed to lots of 1v1 at their grassroots team. If not, maybe in a nice way, could you speak to the coach about that, or at least get their coach to encourage them and praise them for the tackling aspect. But then from a parent point of view, challenge, reward, and you make sure you are also praising them. So even if they don't meet the full challenge, or they didn't get their 3 tackles, did they get 1 tackle? Did they get 2 tackles? Can we overpraise that, as opposed to focusing on the goals, the assists, and so forth? So just a short one today, but hopefully that helps. As we always say, we're always here. If you need any advice or tips, just drop us a message. Always happy to help. If you're interested in our sessions, get on the website. All the details are on there, and we'll look forward to speaking to you all again soon.